My name is Ava Sinclair. I'm 29 years old, and it's 2024 here in Chicago, Illinois. Last night, I stood by the window watching the city lights blur through my tears. He said he needed space, that he wanted a few days to clear his mind. I believed him. I always did. Until I reached into his coat pocket to hang it up and found a hotel key card. I froze. The words on that small white card, Room 214, Grand Marlowe Hotel, glowed like a secret I wasn't supposed to see. Stay with me till the end, because what I discovered behind that hotel door didn't just break my heart, it rebuilt the woman I thought I'd lost. The night air outside felt sharp, slicing through my thoughts as I stood on the balcony clutching that key card. Room 214, I whispered, the numbers rolling on my tongue like a dare. Ethan had left an hour ago, saying, "Don't wait up, Ava. I just need some time to think." His voice had been calm, distant, too calm. Now, with the key card pressed against my palm, every word he'd said replayed like a riddle. Inside, our apartment still smelled of his cologne, cedar and rain, the kind of scent that used to feel safe. Tonight, it felt staged. I opened my phone. His last text blinked back at me. "Love you, just need to clear my head." My heart whispered he wouldn't cheat. My mind whispered back, then why the key? I sat on the edge of the sofa, that tiny piece of plastic burning against my fingers. I thought of all the times I'd defended him to friends, how I said he was just private, how I told everyone we were fine. Maybe I wasn't trying to protect him. Maybe I was protecting the version of myself that believed in him. The city outside buzzed, sirens, laughter, the low hum of traffic. People were living, moving, loving. And here I was, frozen in a moment I couldn't name yet. I could have called him. I could have demanded an answer. But instead, I reached for my coat. Because sometimes, silence tells you more than words ever could. The Grand Marlowe Hotel sat near the river, tall glass windows reflecting the amber streetlights. I'd passed it 100 times, never thinking I'd walk in with shaking hands and a heart full of suspicion. Inside, the air smelled of expensive perfume and disinfectant. The receptionist smiled politely. "Good evening, how may I help you?" I swallowed hard, pretending calm. "Just visiting a friend." I slipped past the lobby, every step echoing. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like someone else, someone about to shatter her own world. The elevator ride to the second floor felt endless. Ding. Room 214 was at the end of the corridor, a small golden plate beside the door. I stopped, my pulse thudded in my ears. I didn't want to be that person, the snooping girlfriend. But betrayal doesn't knock politely. It creeps in disguised as doubt. I lifted the key card, sliding it through the slot. Green light. Click. The door opened to darkness. No voices, no movement, just the muted hum of air conditioning. I stepped inside. A half-empty wine bottle on the table, 2 glasses. A man's jacket on the chair, his jacket. And next to it, a silk scarf I didn't own. My knees nearly gave out. I could smell her perfume, something floral and heavy. On the bed, the sheets were twisted, lived in. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood there, the silence deafening. On the dresser, his phone charger. On the bathroom counter, 2 toothbrushes. All the answers I'd begged the universe for were right there, laid out like evidence in a crime scene. But the worst part, a photo frame by the bed, flipped face down. I turned it over. It was a picture of us. He'd taken our photo to her hotel room. Something inside me cracked, but it wasn't weakness. It was the sound of illusion breaking. I left quietly, closing the door with trembling fingers. The hallway felt colder now, the world sharper. I wanted to run, but part of me stayed there in that room, watching my old life dissolve. Outside, the wind hit my face like a slap of truth. Cars honked, people laughed, life went on. And I realized, so would I. I didn't go home. I walked along the river instead, clutching my coat tighter, watching the city lights shimmer on the water. Every reflection looked like a different version of me. The one who loved too much, the one who trusted too easily, and the one who was finally waking up. Somewhere between anger and heartbreak, I made a quiet promise. I wouldn't destroy him. I'd expose the truth, slowly, silently, until his lies unraveled themselves. Because sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It's patient. It's graceful. It's the moment you walk away without looking back. I looked down at the keycard one last time before dropping it into the river. It floated for a second, then vanished beneath the ripples. And with it, so did the woman who waited for someone else's honesty. That night, I didn't just lose him. I found something better, myself. The river swallowed the key with barely a ripple, as if even the water didn't want to hold his secret. I stood there for a long moment, numb fingers wrapped around the railing, watching the current twist under the bridge lights. My reflection looked blurred, like I didn't fully exist anymore. People passed behind me, laughing, phones glowing, footsteps echoing. Life went on, ordinary and loud, while mine had quietly cracked open. My phone buzzed. Ethan. Hey, I'll stay at my friend's place tonight. Don't wait up. I almost laughed. The message was so casual, so rehearsed, it made me sick. He didn't even bother to lie creatively anymore. I typed back. Take all the time you need. 4 words, calm, clean, hollow. He'd never know that while he was sipping wine with someone else, I was standing in the cold, burying our future in a river. I started walking. The city blurred around me, neon signs, headlights streaking past, couples holding hands. I wondered how many of them were pretending too. A gust of wind tugged at my hair as I crossed the street. The air smelled of rain and burnt coffee from the cafe across the corner. I stepped inside, desperate for warmth, or maybe just for a place where no one knew my name. The barista smiled faintly. Rough night. I hesitated, then nodded. Something like that. He handed me a cup of black coffee. No sugar, no milk. It fit the night perfectly. I sat near the window, wrapping my hands around the cup. The warmth stung my cold fingers, but it was the good kind of pain, the kind that reminds you you're still alive. For the first time in months, I didn't check my phone. Didn't scroll, didn't wait. The silence between us was louder than any fight we could have had. I thought back to the beginning, how gentle he'd been, how certain I'd felt. The little notes he used to leave, the late-night calls, the promises that sounded like poetry. Maybe that's how betrayal begins, not with lies, but with the illusion that someone cares as much as you do. A woman sat down at the next table, typing on her laptop. Her perfume drifted over, sweet and heavy, like the one in that hotel room. My stomach twisted. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. Don't break here, Ava. Not in public, not for him. Instead, I pulled my notebook from my bag, the one where I used to sketch ideas for my design clients. My pen trembled as I wrote 3 words on the blank page. Truth, dignity, distance. That would be my plan. No confrontation, no chaos. Just quiet clarity. I'd learn the truth, protect my dignity, and put distance between us until he wondered how he ever lost me. I looked out the window again. Across the street, the Grand Marlowe's neon sign flickered faintly in the rain. For a moment, I saw a silhouette standing by one of the windows, tall, familiar, head bowed. Maybe it was him, maybe it was. But I realized something powerful. It didn't matter anymore. By the time I finished my coffee, the night had softened. The rain had started, a slow drizzle tapping against the glass. I let it wash through me, cleansing something invisible inside. When I finally walked back home, the apartment greeted me with silence. His shoes were still by the door, his jacket gone. The space between us now felt physical, heavy, deliberate. I placed my bag down and stood in the middle of the living room, looking around. The photos on the wall, the the little souvenirs from trips, the plant he never remembered to water. Each one was a memory that now felt counterfeit. On the kitchen counter lay his spare phone charger, the same one I'd seen at the hotel. My stomach clenched. So he hadn't even been careful. Part of me wanted to throw it against the wall. Instead, I smiled. He'd left clues everywhere. He didn't know that I'd stopped being the woman who overlooked them. I picked up my phone again, opened the Notes app, and started typing. Things he lied about. The business trip to Denver. The new perfume on his jacket. The hotel key. The friend's apartment. I paused, then added one last line. Who he really is. The truth would come out eventually. But it wouldn't be through a fight or a tearful confrontation. It would be through calm exposure, one fact at a time, until even his own reflection couldn't lie back. When I finally lay down, the sheets smelled of him, and for a moment I almost reached for his side of the bed. Then I stopped. I turned over, facing the window instead, watching the city lights shimmer through the rain. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, it wasn't the kind that drowned me. It was the kind that held me afloat. I dreamt of standing by the same river again, this time with empty hands. No keycard, no proof, no pain. Just peace. And somewhere, far away in the city night, I knew Ethan was still living his lie. But soon, he'd realize something he hadn't expected. I wasn't the same woman he'd left waiting. Because while he was losing himself in secrets, I was quietly finding the strength to let him drown in his own truth. Morning crept in through the half-drawn blinds like a truth she hadn't invited. The light felt too honest, every beam exposing what was left of last night's illusion. Ava lay still for a while, listening to the hollow quiet of the apartment. No kettle boiling, no footsteps, no message saying good morning, love. Her phone screen stayed blank. She finally sat up, hair tangled, throat dry. The air still carried traces of Ethan's cologne, and it made her stomach twist. On the bedside table, the notebook from last night waited truth, dignity, distance. 3 words that suddenly felt less like a plan and more like survival instructions. She opened her laptop. The screen's blue glow filled the room. Her hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling slightly as she typed. Grand Marlowe Hotel, guest list. Of course, nothing public came up. But Ava was a designer. She knew systems, details, and backdoors most people ignored. She opened her email drafts, where Ethan once sent a booking confirmation months ago. Same format, same chain, same digital signature. Within minutes, she'd guessed the pattern of their reservation links. Her pulse quickened when one link opened. Reservation, Ethan Ward /room 214 /Grand Marlowe Hotel. The timestamp, 2 weeks ago. So it wasn't the first time. A bitter laugh escaped her. You practiced your lies. Her voice sounded foreign, tired but steadier. The smell of coffee drifted from the cafe below. She stood, wrapped a cardigan around herself, and opened the window. Outside, Chicago moved on horns, chatter, life. Inside, her world rearranged itself, quieter, sharper. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through Ethan's social posts. Filtered smiles, gym selfies, dinners tagged grateful. In one photo, she noticed a reflection in the glass behind him. Long hair, scarlet sleeve. Not hers. She zoomed in until pixels broke apart, but she didn't need clarity. She'd seen enough. A notification buzzed. Ethan, thinking of you. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She typed, miss you too, then paused, deleted it, and simply wrote, take care. Let him think she was still blind. Because truth works best when the liar feels safe. She poured herself coffee, the bitter scent grounding her. The first sip was cold, but it cleared the fog. She opened a new note on her phone. Phase 1, observe. She'd watch him. Record everything quietly. No confrontation, no tears, just evidence. If he'd built his comfort on her trust, She'd let that comfort crumble beneath the weight of his own actions. Later that morning, she showered and dressed as if nothing had changed. Cream jumper, dark jeans, calm face. She caught her reflection before leaving, eyes swollen but alive. It was strange, almost cruelly empowering, how heartbreak could make you look more real. At her design studio, her assistant Lee looked up. "You okay? You look different." Ava forced a smile. "Maybe I am." She spent hours sketching, losing herself in clean lines and muted tones. But beneath every stroke, a new rhythm pulsed, awareness. She noticed details now, the tremor in her own hand, the way light fell across unfinished work, the hush before her phone lit up again. Around noon, Ethan texted. "Lunch later, need to see you." She stared at it. Part of her wanted to throw the phone away. Another part wanted to see just how far he'd go. So she replied, "Sure, same place." She'd meet him, but not as the woman who believed his stories. She'd meet him as the one writing the ending. As she packed her things, Lee called after her. "Ava, you forgot your sketchbook." Ava turned, smiled faintly. "No, I didn't." She left it open on the desk, its page filled with a new sketch. Not furniture or fabric this time, but a key card floating in water, the word truth rippling beneath it. Outside, the clouds were breaking, sunlight cutting through. The world looked the same, but Ava wasn't. She could feel something changing inside her, something calm, dangerous, alive. Because heartbreak had stopped being her weakness. Now it was her weapon. The next morning arrived, but sleep had been a stranger to Ava. The hotel room's silence was deafening, a cruel reminder that love can vanish faster than a heartbeat. She sat by the window, watching the first rays of sunlight pierce through the curtains, their warmth mocking the coldness that had settled in her chest. For hours, she replayed every word, every smile, every moment that now felt like a lie. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the ache, a new voice whispered, "He broke you, yes, but that doesn't mean you'll stay broken." That morning, Ava didn't cry. She stood up, took a deep breath, and started writing in her small leather notebook, something she hadn't touched in years. It wasn't poetry this time, it was a plan. A silent vow to rebuild her dignity, not by screaming, not by revenge, but by proving that she could rise without him. She went through her emails and found what she needed, the photography project she had once paused for Ethan's comfort. It was still waiting, untouched, but full of her old dreams. A forgotten version of her, fearless, curious, unstoppable. As she typed her application again, she caught her reflection in the mirror. There was pain, yes, but also power. The kind of power that comes when you realize you survived what was meant to destroy you. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Harper, her best friend, the one person who knew every version of her. Harper's face softened when she saw Ava. "Hey, you look like someone who's planning something dangerous." Ava smiled faintly. Not dangerous, just necessary. They sat together, sipping coffee, silence thick with unspoken truths. Harper finally asked, "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Ava shook her head. "Not yet, because I'm still figuring out who I was before him." Later that day, Ava walked into the art studio where her journey had once begun. Every wall, every paintbrush felt like a reminder of the girl she used to be, passionate, creative, and untamed. The manager, an older woman named Clara, recognized her instantly. "Ava Bennett, I thought you disappeared into love." Ava smiled softly. "I did, but I'm finding my way back now." That afternoon, she picked up her camera again, the same one she'd bought years ago with her first paycheck. As she looked through the lens, she saw the world differently, not as a broken woman, but as someone rediscovering her worth. The photos that day weren't perfect, but they were real, raw emotions captured in the golden light of forgiveness and quiet strength. That night, Ava uploaded the first image to her private online portfolio, a self-portrait titled, "Alone, but Awake." It wasn't revenge, it was rebirth. And as her photo began to receive quiet praise from art circles, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in months: peace. But fate wasn't done with her yet. Because 2 days later, an anonymous email arrived in her inbox. No subject, no name. Just one image, Ethan's hand, holding the same hotel keycard, with another woman's fingers entwined in his. Ava froze. The storm she thought had passed was only beginning. Ava stared at the screen. That single photograph, his hand, another woman's fingers, felt like a knife sliding between her ribs. The world around her seemed to blur. Her heartbeat grew loud, heavy, almost unbearable. For a few long minutes she didn't move. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, frozen in disbelief. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the realization that every "I love you," every "I just need space," had been a perfectly crafted lie. Her phone buzzed. Harper's name flashed on the screen. Ava let it ring. She needed silence, the kind of silence where pain transforms into purpose. She looked again at the photo. The woman's hand had a bracelet, gold, thin, with a single blue charm. Ava zoomed in, her breath catching. She knew that bracelet. She had gifted it. To Leela, her closest colleague, her so-called friend. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Oh, so it was both of you," she whispered. "The people who taught me to trust were the ones sharpening the knife." For the first time in days, Ava didn't feel weak. She felt alive, dangerously calm, her mind suddenly clear. She created a new folder on her laptop and titled it Project Reflection. But this wasn't just about art anymore. It was about exposure, not through anger but through truth. That night, she began her quiet investigation. She searched hotel reviews, timestamps, and checked her old cloud storage. She found a familiar email from Ethan, sent the same night he claimed he was working late. The metadata showed he'd been in a hotel Wi-Fi zone 20 miles from home. Every detail, every lie, she documented it, one by one. She wasn't doing it to hurt him. She was doing it to understand the depth of his deceit, because only by knowing the full truth could she free herself completely. Days passed. Ava didn't confront anyone. She smiled, went to work, returned to her photography sessions, but her eyes had changed. There was wisdom there now, and something sharper like a blade wrapped in velvet. One evening, while editing her photos, she received another message. It was from Leela. "Hey babe, I've missed you. We should catch up soon. I have something to tell you, something big." Ava read the message twice and smiled coldly. She typed a reply. "Sure, coffee tomorrow, my place." The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains like gold fire. Ava wore white, simple, pure, almost angelic. She brewed coffee, set 2 cups on the table, and placed her camera nearby. When Leela arrived, her face lit up with practiced innocence. "It's been so long, Ava. You look amazing." Ava smiled softly. "You too, Leela. Sit down." For a moment, the air was calm. Leela reached for her cup, but her hand trembled slightly. Ava tilted her head. "So, what did you want to tell me?" Leela hesitated, eyes darting. It's about Ethan." Ava leaned forward, her tone gentle but her eyes unreadable. "Yes, I'd love to hear about him." The camera light blinked red. Recording. The hunter had become the hunted, and Leela didn't even know it yet. Leela sat across from me, clutching her cup as if warmth could protect her from what was coming. The steam curled between us, soft, deceptive, like the friendship we once had. I watched her eyes. They darted left, then right, unable to meet mine for more than a second. She was nervous. "Good. So," I began softly, stirring my coffee, "what did you want to tell me about Ethan?" Leela forced a smile, her lips trembling just enough to betray her fear. "Well, I don't know how to say this, but I think you deserve to know. Ethan's been distant lately, right? I've seen him with someone, a woman." I nodded slowly, feigning surprise. "Really? How long have you known?" She swallowed. "A few months. I didn't want to upset you until I was sure." Her voice shook on that last word. "Sure." I nearly laughed. She was sitting here, lying to me, pretending to protect me when I already knew everything. I stood up, walked to my desk, and picked up my camera. Leela frowned. "Are you filming something?" "Yes," I said quietly. "A story about honesty." Her brows furrowed. "Oh, for your channel." "Something like that." I pressed a button on the camera. The recorded footage from last night appeared on the screen: the hotel entrance, Ethan's car, his silhouette stepping out with her hand in his. The silence that followed was suffocating. Leela froze, her face drained of color. I turned to her. "It's funny, isn't it? The woman in this video has your bracelet, the same one I gave you 2 birthdays ago." Her cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. The coffee spread like a dark stain, a mirror to her guilt. "Ava, please," she stammered. "I didn't mean for it to happen, it just happened," I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "Leela, I would have forgiven a mistake, but what hurts is that you came into my home, smiled, and still lied to my face." She covered her mouth, tears welling. "He told me you didn't love him anymore, that you were always busy, distant." I shook my head. "So you believed him, and you both decided to fill the silence with betrayal." Her tears fell freely now, but I wasn't angry. I was calm, painfully calm. "I'm not here to humiliate you," I said quietly. "I just wanted to see if you'd tell me the truth when given the chance." Leela's voice cracked. "Ava, I'm sorry. Please don't post that video. I'll do anything." I looked down at the broken cup on the floor. "You already did everything, Leela, and so did he." Then I walked to the window and opened it, letting in the cold morning air. "You can leave now. I need to clean up." She hesitated, searching my face for forgiveness that wasn't there, but I had nothing left to give. When the door closed behind her, I finally let out a long, trembling breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt weightless. Empty but free. The betrayal had burned everything I thought I was, but in its ashes, I found something new: clarity. I deleted the recording. Not because she deserved mercy, but because I deserved peace. I stood by the window, watching the city move below: cars, people, lives intertwining, all pretending to be whole. And I whispered to myself, "I'll rebuild, but next time I'll never let someone else define my worth." Outside, the sky shifted from gray to gold. A new day had begun, and so had I. But deep down, I knew this story wasn't over yet. Ethan still didn't know that I knew. And that truth would soon find its way to him. You think that was her breaking point? Wait till you see what she does next. Don't go anywhere. It had been 5 days since Leela left my apartment in tears. 5 long days of silence between Ethan and me. He didn't know that I knew, and I wanted to keep it that way. I needed him to believe that everything was still normal, because only then could I watch him tangle himself in his own lies. That evening, he texted me, "Dinner tonight, I miss you." I stared at the message for a long time, my lips curling into a quiet smile. "Sure," I replied, "I've missed you too." At the restaurant, he arrived wearing the same charm of the man I once loved, his smile smooth, his voice warm, his eyes pretending to care. But I saw through it all now. "Rough week?" he asked. I nodded, stirring my drink. "You could say that." He reached across the table, touching my hand gently. "You've been distant lately. Everything okay?" That line, "You've been distant," it almost made me laugh. "I've just been reflecting," I said softly. "You know, on honesty and trust." He looked slightly uncomfortable. "Deep topics for a Thursday night." "Maybe," I said. "But tell me, Ethan, do you ever think people lie because they're scared to lose what they already have?" He hesitated. "I suppose so. Sometimes lying feels easier." I tilted my head, even if it means living with guilt every day. He looked away, pretending to smile. "You're getting philosophical again." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I've just seen something that changed my perspective." His fork paused midair. "Seen something?" I sipped my drink slowly, letting the silence stretch. "Yeah, You'd be surprised how much the truth shows itself when people stop talking and start observing. He blinked, unsure of what I meant. I didn't explain. I didn't have to. I could see it, the flicker of fear behind his calm expression. I leaned forward. You remember that night you said you needed alone time? I was thinking, maybe we all need that sometimes, to clear our minds, find ourselves. Yeah, he said quickly, forcing a laugh. I just needed to think, you know how it gets. Of course, I said sweetly, though I did wonder, what kind of hotel offers that kind of clarity? His face froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. A pause. A blink. A faint tremor in his hand. Then he recovered, smiling awkwardly. What do you mean? I smiled back, calm, controlled. Oh, nothing, I said. It's just that I found a key card in your coat that night. Funny, isn't it? How honesty always finds its way home. He swallowed hard. His mask cracked just slightly, but I saw it. That flicker of panic, that instant of realization. He opened his mouth, searching for words that didn't exist. Ava, it's not what you think, I cut him off softly. Don't worry, you don't have to explain, not yet. The waiter came by, breaking the tension. I thanked him with a polite smile, then looked back at Ethan. Enjoy your meal, I said quietly. I know it's hard to digest the truth, but eventually it settles. For the rest of dinner, he barely spoke. Every question I asked was a mirror, and every answer he gave revealed another crack. When the bill came, I placed my card down first. Dinner on me, I said. After all, you've treated me to quite the performance lately. He looked at me, confused, nervous, almost exposed. And I looked right back, calm, knowing, powerful. As we left the restaurant, the air was cold and sharp. I turned to him and said quietly, Ethan, sometimes silence tells you more than confession ever could. And tonight, I heard everything I needed. Then I walked away, leaving him standing there, in the wreckage of his own lies. When I got home that night, the city lights looked different, softer, quieter, as if the world had finally exhaled with me. I stood by the window, watching the rain tap gently against the glass. Every drop sounded like a heartbeat, steady, calm, alive. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Not because justice had been served, but because I'd finally stopped begging for truth from a man who couldn't even be honest with himself. My phone buzzed. It was Ethan. Ava, please, can we talk? I can explain everything. I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring slightly. Then I typed back. There's nothing left to explain. You already told me everything without saying a word. And I meant it. His silence at dinner, his trembling hands, the panic in his eyes, all of it had spoken louder than any confession ever could. I turned off my phone and poured myself a cup of tea. As the steam rose, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, tired, yes, but calm, softer, stronger. I smiled at her, the woman who had once begged for love, and was now learning that peace doesn't come from being loved. It comes from being true to yourself. The next morning, I woke early and walked to the lake near my flat. The air was cold, crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and autumn leaves. I sat on the bench where Ethan and I had once talked about our future. That memory no longer hurt. It just existed, like an old photograph you keep, not out of pain, but as proof that you survived. I took out my camera, the same one that had captured my heartbreak. But this time, I wasn't recording pain. I was recording rebirth. A little girl ran past me, chasing her red balloon. Her laughter filled the air, pure, fearless, free. And for a second, I envied that innocence. Then I realized I was finding mine again, too, not the naive kind, but the brave kind. I whispered to myself, You did it, Ava. You walked through the fire and you didn't let it burn your heart. As I clicked the shutter, the image froze. A child, a balloon, the sun breaking through gray clouds. It was perfect. Later that evening, Ethan showed up at my door. He looked nothing like the man I once loved, his eyes hollow, his confidence cracked. Ava, please, he said softly. "I made a mistake. I'll fix this. Just tell me what to do." I stepped aside, letting him face the silence of my apartment. The air between us felt heavy with everything that could never be undone. "You can't fix something you broke on purpose," I said quietly. He took a step closer. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I stopped him. "Ethan, you didn't just hurt me. You made me doubt myself. You made me believe I was the problem. And that's something no apology can erase." He looked down, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't even recognize myself anymore." I nodded. Maybe that's a good place to start. He looked at me, searching for anger, for love, for something he could still use. But all he found was calm. "I hope," I said softly, "you learn what honesty really feels like. Not for me, but for yourself." He stood there for a moment longer, then nodded slowly and left. No drama, no shouting, just quiet closure. When the door clicked shut, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel empty. I felt light. Because the truth wasn't that he broke me. The truth was that he freed me from the version of myself that tolerated less than I deserved. I walked back to the window, where the night sky stretched endlessly over Chicago. Somewhere out there, life was beginning again, not just for me, but within me. And as the city lights shimmered below, I whispered, maybe losing him was just another way of finding myself. The days that followed felt like a strange silence, not empty, not lonely, but clean. Like standing in the aftermath of a storm, when the air smells of rain and everything broken glistens with possibility. Ethan was gone. No calls, no messages, no attempts to come back. And that silence, once my greatest fear, had become my greatest peace. I started walking every morning before sunrise. The streets of Chicago felt different when no one was around. The hum of early trains, the glow of streetlights fading into dawn, it all reminded me that life never really stops. It just shifts. One morning, I found myself near a small art cafe I hadn't visited in years. Inside, the walls were covered with local photography, raw, imperfect, human. I felt something stir inside me, something I thought I'd lost. The owner, an older woman named Margaret, recognized me immediately. "Ava Sinclair," she said with a grin. "It's been a while, love. Haven't seen your work since that downtown gallery show." I smiled softly. "It's been a complicated year." She tilted her head. "Ah, the kind that either breaks you or makes you an artist." I laughed quietly. "Maybe both." Margaret gestured toward an empty wall near the counter. "That space is open. You ever decide to tell your story through your lens again, you know where to hang it." Her words followed me home like an echo. "Tell your story." That evening, I opened my old hard drive. Thousands of photographs filled the screen, portraits, street shots, stolen moments of strangers. But this time, I wasn't looking for beauty. I was looking for truth. I began selecting images that captured emotion in its purest form. Joy, grief, loneliness, healing. I titled the new folder, "The Space Between Lies." Each photo I added wasn't just art, it was a mirror. A woman laughing alone at a cafe table. A man watching rain fall through a cracked window. Two hands almost touching, but not quite. I didn't realize it then, but I was rebuilding myself, one frame at a time. Days turned into weeks. Margaret called one afternoon and said, "That wall, still waiting, Ava." So I did it. I printed the collection, black and white, raw and unfiltered, and held my first exhibit in 2 years. The night of the opening, the small cafe was filled with quiet chatter and the smell of roasted coffee. People moved slowly between the photographs, whispering, thinking. Some smiled, others looked close to tears. I stood in a corner, watching. Not for validation, but for connection. Then a young woman approached me. She had kind eyes and trembling hands. "Are you the photographer?" I nodded. She hesitated, then said softly, "Your work, it feels like heartbreak, but somehow it gives peace. Like someone finally said what I couldn't." Her words hit deeper than I expected. I smiled gently. "Then maybe we both healed a little tonight." As the night went on, I realized something profound. Healing doesn't come from forgetting what broke you. It comes from using it, turning pain into purpose, turning silence into stories. Later, as I was packing up, I noticed one photograph people lingered on the most, the one of the lake at dawn. The same bench where I had once sat alone, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Now it was framed beautifully, glowing under soft light. A handwritten note rested beside it. Someone from the cafe had pinned it during the show. It read, "This picture made me believe that starting over isn't losing, it's choosing yourself." I didn't know who wrote it, but I knew it was true. The next morning, I sat by that same lake again, camera in hand, not searching for memories, but capturing new beginnings. The air was cold, the light perfect. And as I took the shot, I realized I wasn't documenting pain anymore. I was documenting freedom. Later that week, I received an email from a small magazine. They wanted to feature my collection, The Space Between Lies, in their upcoming issue. They wrote, "Your work feels like recovery, the quiet kind that doesn't ask for attention, just understanding." I smiled reading that, because that's exactly what my journey had become, not loud revenge, not dramatic closure, just understanding. Understanding why people lie, why love breaks, why trust hurts, and why, somehow, it's still worth trying again. That night, as the city lights flickered through my window, I wrote a single line in my journal. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means you've outgrown the need to remember. I closed the book and turned off the light. The moonlight fell across my face, and for the first time, I didn't think about Ethan or Leela or the hotel key. I thought about Ava, the woman who walked through betrayal and came out whole. And somewhere deep inside, I heard a quiet voice whisper, "You made it. You turned your scars into art." I smiled in the dark. Because that was the real ending I never saw coming. Ava stood at the edge of the rooftop bar, the city's skyline glittering behind her like a wall of secrets. The air was sharp and cold, but she didn't feel it. All she felt was the pulse of the truth, finally, fully, beating in her chest. Ethan's laughter echoed faintly from inside, blending with the music and glasses clinking. He had no idea she was standing there, holding the evidence that would end everything. For weeks, Ava had watched him lie so smoothly that it almost felt rehearsed. The late meetings, the mental breaks, the business trips. But now she knew where each lie led, not to solitude or stress relief, but to her, Harper Collins, the woman who smiled too easily, who texted him with little hearts, who thought she was the only one. Ava took a deep breath. She didn't want to fight. She wanted clarity. When Ethan stepped outside, jacket slung over his arm, his eyes met hers, and for the first time in weeks, he froze. "Ava," he said, his smile uncertain, "what are you doing here?" "I was about to ask you the same," she replied quietly. He tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. "You're imagining things again, aren't you? I told you." She cut him off. "I know about the hotel, about Harper, about every single message you deleted." The silence that followed was thick, almost cinematic. His face went pale, his mouth half open, searching for a lie that could save him. "Ava, listen, it's not what you think," he started. She tilted her head slightly. "Then tell me what I think, Ethan." He stepped closer, hands trembling. "It was just a distraction. I was under pressure. You were distant, Don't," she whispered. "Don't you dare make me your excuse." Ethan's mask cracked. For a second, she saw guilt, then fear, and finally, the arrogance that had always been there, hiding under charm. "You can't just walk away," he said, his tone changing. "We've been together for 3 years. You can't throw that away because of a mistake." She smiled faintly. "You already did." He reached out, but she stepped back. "Ava, please, we can fix this." She looked at him, really looked, and realized she didn't hate him. She pitied him. Because Ethan wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry for being caught. "I'm not here for revenge," she said softly. "I'm here to let go." He blinked, confused. "Let go." "You said you needed alone time," she murmured. "So take it, for real this time." Then she dropped his hotel keycard onto the ground, the same one she'd found in his coat that night. It landed between them with a soft clink, small, but loud enough to end everything. Ethan stared at it, stunned. "Ava." But she turned away. As she walked through the bar, people glanced at her, not because she caused a scene, but because of the calm in her eyes. That quiet power that comes from a woman who has seen the truth and survived it. Outside, the night was alive, cars, laughter, city lights, everything moving, breathing. Ava took a slow breath and smiled to herself for the first time in months. It wasn't victory she felt, it was freedom. When she reached the corner, her phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. "He lied to me too, Harper." Ava stopped, staring at the screen. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she typed, "He'll do it again. Walk away while you can." And hit send. She slipped her phone into her pocket, feeling the weight of closure. Not every truth needed confrontation. Sometimes, silence was the loudest response. As she crossed the street, her reflection appeared in a store window, the same woman but different eyes. Stronger, wiser, untouchable. Behind her, Ethan was still inside, trapped in the wreckage of his own lies. Ava didn't need to see it, she knew it. Because when a person builds love on deception, the collapse always comes, and he was standing right in the middle of it. The wind picked up, brushing through her hair. She looked toward the glowing skyline and whispered, not to him, but to herself. "Never again." A taxi pulled up beside her. She got in, closed the door, and disappeared into the city lights. The morning light filtered through the blinds like thin blades of truth, sharp, clean, and impossible to ignore. I sat at my desk, coffee untouched, watching the clock tick towards 9:00 a.m., the moment my carefully laid plan would meet reality. Ethan had always believed he could control every room he entered. Every conversation, every truth. But what he didn't realize was that silence, my silence, had been the loudest warning of all. It had been 2 weeks since I'd stopped pretending. 2 weeks of subtle moves, forwarding an anonymous email, attaching one picture, one date, one hotel invoice. Just enough to make Harper question him. And enough to make his company's compliance department curious about the unaccounted business expenses in his name. Now, it was all playing out exactly as I'd imagined. My phone buzzed, a text from Leela. "You're not going to believe this. Harper just stormed into the office. She's shouting at him in front of everyone." A slow, steady breath left my chest, a mixture of relief and quiet power. This wasn't chaos. This was justice dressed in silence. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Chicago looked the same, calm, gray, indifferent, but inside me, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was watching the truth take its natural course. Another message came through. "Ava, HR just called him in. It's bad." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some stories finish themselves. The irony. Ethan had invited Harper to the same hotel where he used to clear his mind. And she, in a twist of poetic irony, found another keycard in his pocket last night. Not mine this time, but someone else. History has a cruel sense of humor. I smiled faintly, remembering all those nights I'd stayed awake wondering what was wrong with me. But it was never me. It was always the hollow man who thought lies could build a life. A sudden call from Ethan's number broke my thoughts. I stared at the screen, then let it ring. And ring. And fade into silence. Then a voice message appeared. "Ava, please, I don't know what you did, but everything's falling apart. Harper's gone, my job, on the line. Just tell me it wasn't you. I know you wouldn't ruin me like this." But I didn't ruin him. He did. I simply stopped protecting him from himself. I replayed his message once, not to hear his voice, but to remind myself how far I'd come from that trembling woman who used to cry into her pillow. By evening, the gossip had spread like wildfire. People were whispering, Posts were being deleted, and his spotless online persona was crumbling under the weight of his own deceit. And me. I just sat on my balcony, wrapped in a soft blanket, sipping cold coffee and watching the city lights blink to life. For once, I didn't need closure. I was closure. As the night deepened, a notification appeared, an email from Harper herself. "You were right, I should have listened. He's a liar. But thank you for showing me the truth." Strange, isn't it? The same woman who unknowingly stole my peace was now thanking me for helping her find hers. Life had come full circle. Down below, cars moved like tiny veins of light through the streets, everyone chasing something, losing something, or learning something. And I'd finally stopped chasing. The past didn't feel heavy anymore. It just existed, a lesson written in scars, not regrets. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't look. Because I already knew who it was and what he wanted. Forgiveness. But forgiveness isn't something you beg for when the fire's already burned down your house. It's something you earn long before you strike the first match. I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and whispered to the darkness, "Goodbye, Ethan." This time, it wasn't anger. It was peace. The kind that comes when the truth finally speaks louder than your pain. And as I drifted to sleep, I smiled, not because he'd lost everything, but because I'd finally found myself. The next morning, the world felt lighter. Not because anything grand had changed, but because the weight I'd been carrying, the invisible one that lived between my ribs, had finally loosened its grip. There were no fireworks, no poetic metaphors playing out in the sky, just silence. A soft, human kind of silence. One that didn't hurt anymore. I made myself a cup of tea and stood by the window. The air was cold, brushing against my skin like an old friend trying to say goodbye gently. Outside, the city moved as it always had, buses passing, horns in the distance, people late for somewhere important. But to me, everything felt slowed down, like the world had agreed to pause just long enough for me to breathe. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up wondering what someone else was thinking of me. I didn't wonder if I'd said the right thing, done enough, been enough. I simply wondered what I wanted from life. Ethan's downfall wasn't something I celebrated. There was no joy in seeing someone break, even when they'd broken you first. What I wanted, what I'd always wanted, was truth. And in its quiet, complicated way, the truth had found me. In the days that followed, he tried to reach me. Calls, texts, even emails, long, messy paragraphs that began with "I'm sorry" and ended with "I miss you." Sometimes I'd see his name flash on my screen, and my heart would still skip, out of old habit. But I never replied. Because silence, I'd learned, is sometimes the kindest goodbye you can give to someone who once broke you. People talk a lot about closure, like it's a conversation, an apology, a moment when everything finally makes sense. But closure doesn't come from words. It comes from finally realizing you don't need them anymore. And that realization is freedom. One evening, I walked the same route I used to take when my world was falling apart. It was cold, my breath turning to smoke as I passed the corner bakery, the bookshop, the little cafe where Ethan and I once sat on rainy days pretending we had forever. I stopped there for a moment, not to remember but to let go. The same streetlights that once watched my tears now glowed softer, warmer, like they too had forgiven the night. Grief changes everything it touches, even light. A few days later, Leela called. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the guilt that had been living quietly between her words. We met for coffee at a quiet corner cafe. She looked smaller somehow, her eyes tired. The first few minutes were filled with awkward silence, spoons clinking against cups, the hum of a heater somewhere behind us. Then she finally whispered, "Ava, I didn't know, not really. I'm so sorry." I just smiled, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that says it's okay now. "It's fine," I told her softly. "We all do what we think is right at the time." Her eyes filled with tears. But I didn't feel angry. Because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's just the decision to stop bleeding. Pain had changed me, yes. But not into someone bitter, into someone awake. I began to notice small things again. The sound of rain tapping on the window. The smell of coffee early in the morning. The way sunlight moves across a wooden floor. It's strange how beauty returns once pain leaves a little space for it. A week later, I packed a small overnight bag and drove out to the lake. The same lake where Ethan had once told me he needed alone time. Funny how those words used to sting, now they just sounded hollow. This time, it was my alone time. Not to escape anyone, but to finally meet myself again. The road there was quiet, the sky pale with winter clouds. I parked near the edge, stepped out, and breathed in the cold air until it burned my lungs a little. It felt good, real cleansing. The lake was frozen in parts, still in others, reflecting a sky that looked like it couldn't decide between blue and gray. I sat on a wooden bench, the same one where I'd once cried for hours. But now my eyes were dry. I closed them and whispered, "I forgive you, but not for you for me." The words didn't feel rehearsed. They just came out, simple and quiet. And in that moment, I felt something lift. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about refusing to let it keep happening inside you. Time passed strangely that day. The light shifted across the water, and I found myself tracing the ripples with my eyes, wondering how long I'd been sitting there. Maybe an hour, maybe my whole life. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who waited by the phone, who edited herself to be easier to love, who said it's fine even when it was. I wanted to reach back through time and hold her hand. Tell her she didn't need to break herself to fit into someone else's love story. But life doesn't work like that. You don't get to rewrite your past, only understand it better. As the afternoon began to fade, I walked closer to the water. The wind danced across the surface, pulling at my hair, carrying away whatever fragments of anger I still had left. Each gust felt like a conversation between me and the universe. As if it was saying, "You're allowed to be okay now." I stood there for a long while, until the cold bit through my coat. But I didn't move. Because it felt sacred somehow, this stillness, this quiet surrender. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang. The sound echoed across the lake, deep and hollow, like a heartbeat reminding me I was still here. Still alive. That's when I realized peace isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with a grand entrance. It slips in quietly, sits beside you, and waits for you to notice. Later that night, back home, I sat by my window again, the same spot where the story had begun. Chicago lights blinked outside like tired stars, and the city hummed below me. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in months, and wrote, "Closure isn't something you get, it's something you become." Then I closed it. Days turned into weeks. Ethan eventually stopped calling. I heard, through mutual friends, that he'd moved away, started fresh somewhere new. And that was fine. We were two people who had loved, lied, and learned. And that was enough. Sometimes I'd still think of him, not with anger, not even with sadness, just with understanding. He was a chapter in my story, not the whole book. And maybe that's what healing really means. Not forgetting the story, but learning to read it without pain. One evening, I returned to the lake again. The sky was darker this time, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. I stood at the same spot as before, hands deep in my pockets, and watched the water shift under the wind. It was quiet, no music, no noise, just the sound of the world breathing. And for the first time, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was free. The old Ava, the one who waited, who doubted, who begged for love, she was gone. In her place stood someone new. Someone who finally understood that love doesn't always come to stay. Sometimes it comes just to teach. As the rain began to fall, light and soft, I whispered one last thing, not to him, not even to the past, but to myself. Some endings aren't meant to hurt. They're meant to set you free. And for the first